All right, welcome back. I got the cowls off. I'm gonna do some of that trimming that I talked about. But in the meantime, my AN fittings for the oil cooler showed up from Aircraft Spruce, and I'm happy to report that I don't think it's me measuring them wrong. Wicks, who I bought the first ones from, you can clearly say that end is much bigger, even though they have the exact same part number. So anyway, I contacted them, but they're a little slow to respond. But I'm happy that I can put this guy back on. And while I had the cowl off, I also brought my Deutsch connector set home. And basically what we're doing here, this is for a forward facing camera. We use these at work quite a bit, so it's just an automotive style, but I like these because it has the nice mount. From what I can tell, mounting it like underneath the air intake seems to be a good spot. These cameras are pretty bulletproof unless they get damaged or something. This connector seems to be pretty good. The thing that we've seen a little bit of a failure rate with, and we're talking low percentage, is the step down converter. This goes from 12 volts to the 3 volts. So a good thing would be to put it inside, but that means you have to run the camera cable inside. And for serviceability, you want that to be outside so you can disconnect it. And anyway, long story short, we used a Teftel cable, and basically I just put a Deutsch connector on it. This is going to be above the oil cooler out here, and easy to replace if it needs replacement. All right, back to cowl work. All right, I'm getting closer. One thing that I'm struggling with a little bit is, you can see I got a good 3/8 on the bottom, but this just always wants to be forward a little bit. So I noticed that the insert in, where this overlaps was pretty thick. So I sanded the gel coat off of the lower cowl to see if this can go back a little bit. That does help. I might do that a little bit more. But the other thing I noticed is, obviously I was trying to center it from where they had cut it, and that would make this line up with that on that side and this on this side. But you can see it's over by about, I shifted this whole thing this way over 1/2 inch. So that was one center line that I drew just to use as a reference point, and that freed this up quite a bit. I know things are going to sag as they progress, but this is getting much closer. These angles are getting closer. That one. Yeah, anyway, so just keep trimming away. I have a feeling that to get to this point is only 10% of the work, so a little ways to go. All right, hopefully I'm not overthinking this, but I decided to set up a laser that goes down the middle of the plane, which is all fine and good. Just trying to make sure this cowling is as straight as can be. So here I have it lined up with the spinner, which is obviously more important, but again, this engine is skewed to one side, but this gives a good idea of how much. And yeah, so basically I'm going by the fits in the corner, like where it wants to sit, rather than trying to force that over, because that would be silly. Wow, this is cool. Learning something every day. Oh, the other thing I learned, this isn't mounted anywhere up front. It's all supported around the firewall, and then a big, clamshell design holds it all together. I knew that. All right, now that I'm getting closer to where this wants to sit, I still want to bring it down just a hair bit, but I made this simple but useful tool. It's just a piece of 20 thousandths or whatever thin aluminum with an 1/8 inch spacer on top, and what it allows me to do is basically just line it up in there. So say I want to take another 1/8 of an inch down and make a straight mark. Now I don't have to cut it to the mark, but I think this is important to get this set up, and hopefully that'll be a straight shot going to the back there. I don't know if you can tell from that camera angle, but I have a nice little bit more than 3/8 space down here, but it gets tight in this upper right hand corner. So I'm thinking, with the engine mounts settling a little bit, it would make it perfect. So by me pulling this down, I don't know, simulating a few years of engine mount wear, So I think I might sit down here somewhere, so I'll probably bring this down just a hair bit more, but yeah. All right, it's a few days later. I didn't work on it the last couple of days, but I trimmed this, so I can't rivet this yet because we still need to wire up the avionics. So I basically trimmed it to right between the line where the clecos are and the real cut line. Being very careful not to cut too much. I made my 3-inch markings just on the cowl, right back from that. I'm trying to get this a little bit lower. So I trimmed here a little bit, trying to get it to settle this way. I'm just being very cautious. I trimmed another 1/16 inch off of this, but I think I'm gonna trim another 1/16 and I keep going further back here. So basically my point is to get these corners to fit 100%, get these to fit size-wise this way. Like if anything, I'd want this a little bit lower than that, or maybe a little bit lower than it is now at least. And then I'll be able to do this. So I'll have, you know, this, and this, and everything else should fall into place. Might just be wishful thinking, but been a lot of cutting, trimming, cutting, cowl on, cowl off. Good night. All right, using my little spacer tool to just put the little flat aluminum edge into the lower gap and draw a small line to trim another 1/16 off, or as close as I want to get to it. Guess what I'm going to be doing today? Working on the cowl. So this is getting more flush, the direction I want to go. And next major milestone or nail biter is I basically just marked these ticks 3 inches back from the joggle, or where the boot cowl skin end. Transferred them over here. I'm going to connect these. I'm basically going to trim that down and hopefully it'll fit into that. And I think then I'll be able to start putting some cleco. So that's a really tight fit. I'm really happy with how that came out. You could argue it's almost too tight, so I might sand a little bit of that off. They want you to put 1/40 hole in the center, 1/2 inch back. I'm gonna go 1/2 inch plus 1/16 to kind of make room for a paint gap that's in here, and plus, you know, it'll help me move that back. So that'll be a first point that will be a consistent reference point. If I can cleco it in there, everything else should kind of fall into place. So I like using these red pencils when I do my little markings, you know, and I have to do a little bit of trimming here and there. And once I sand it, I use a damp microfiber towel, and I basically wipe all the dust off, which is easy. I use a vacuum cleaner too as well, but that also gets the pencil marks off, so then you can kind of go back and forth, put new pencil marks, sand it, cut it, and wipe them off, clean it, and cycle continues, but works well. All right, finally had enough guts to drill all these. Put a little paper towel in there with some tape underneath. Helps catch the shavings and keep them from going all over the engine. Another thing I did here is I put a piece of fuel line that I just cut open, actually, you know, two layers thick. That gives me about a 3/8 inch spacer and seems to be really nice to make the cowl line up with the spinner where I want it. All right, carry on. I already took it off, but basically I just measured the 3 inches going all the way over, and time to chop some more cowl. Eight hours later, guess what I'm doing? I'm and fitting the panel, the cowl. Downloaded the new one, 4 inches, 1/2 inch in, okay? The old one said 5/16, so I didn't really know why I was gonna do 3/8, and I just happened to look at the new one, 1/2 inch in, makes this all line up nicely. Spacing on the bottom here, 4.5, not 4 inches, beware. The newer version also has 2 holes in here. The old one only has 1. So, just a few things I noticed. Carry on. One of the things that's a little tricky to get to fit properly is these corners in the front where they overlap. And what I did, I think what you have to do is actually sand some of the gel coat away from the outside of this. I was trying to sand the gel coat rather than the structural part inside there, but a combination of those two gets that to fit a lot better. So, and I round over the inside edge so it kind of sits on there. So just a lot of tedious work, but it's getting there. All right, almost 12 hours later, 11.5 hours later, and I think I am ready to make the final cut. I did the same thing, blue tape, 3 inches, yada yada. And I'm pretty confident that's gonna sit where I want it to. Here we go. All right, all the gaps are nice and tight. I still got a file for the paint gap. This side here, I got, minor issues, nothing very major. This one wants to bow out a little bit, so I'm hesitant. The fit, as far as where I cut, is perfect, or good enough for now. But I have a feeling if I put fasteners in, they're kind of like, I don't want it to bow out. So I'm gonna give that some thinking. I got these guys in. This is pretty close. Gonna need a little bit of sanding here, a little bit more sanding here. This side is really nice. I have no issues here. Those fasteners can go right in. What I did have, little issue with is the bottom here seems like there's an awful lot of gel coat, and there was a big lump on the track there of resin. So I'm trying to, first I was like, all right, let me Dremel it out of here, but now I'm trying to flatten this down, and you can see how thick it is. This side actually bows out, so I'm probably just gonna sand that down. But now 10 o'clock, I've been at it since 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to bed. Good night. I was really trying to make this 2 parts for the cowl video. I just realized there's like 21 clips on there, and I'm looking at all the hours I have into it, and I still have to put the fasteners in and finish the exhaust. So I think it's going to be a 3-part video. I'm sorry, and thank you for watching. I'll probably end this one here, get it posted, so at least I get something up this week. Thank you for watching. Again, this is just me doing it, kind of following the instructions, but left off somewhere along the way and got the gist of they just want it on straight. So, good night.